Hello and welcome to chapter number 5 from your book. The name of the chapter is The 100 Dresses, Part 1. So this is first a background about the chapter. From where does it actually begin? It begins with the first Polish immigrants arriving in America in 1608. But the largest wave of Polish immigration occurred in the early 20th century when more than 1 million Poles migrated to the United States. The Polish state did not exist at that time, and the immigrants were identified according to their country of origin rather than to ethnicity. They were identified as Russian Poles, German Poles, and Austrian Poles. So these are two important points that you need to make a note of. Polish immigrants arriving in America. Red होना चाहिए. Polish immigrants arrived in America in 1608 and they were identified according to their ethnicity. One of the most notable Polish American communities is in Chicago and its suburbs. So Chicago is sometimes called the second largest Polish city in the world because of the number of immigrants coming in from Poland. Next only to Warsaw, the capital of Poland, Polish Americans were sometimes discriminated against in the United States, as were the Irish, Italians, and Jews. According to the US 2000 census, 66,74,014 Americans of age 5 years and older reported Polish as the language spoken at home, which is about 1.4% of the people who speak languages other than English, or 0.25% of the US population. So out of this, all of this information, these are the two things that you should be making a note of. Yes. Let's move ahead. Now, the story begins with Wanda Petronsky. She's the main character in the story. Today, Monday, Wanda Petronsky was not in her seat. But nobody, not even Peggy and Madeline, the girls who started all the fun, noticed her absence. Usually, Wanda sat in the seat next to the last seat in the last row in room 13. She sat in the corner of the room where the rough boys who did not make good marks sat. The corner of the room where there was most scuffling of feet, most roars of laughter when anything funny was said, and most mud and dirt on the floor. So the story begins in a classroom. And what we get to hear, what we get to understand is that it revolves around a girl named Wanda Petronsky. Now this girl cannot be found. She's not there in the class. And she's sitting somewhere else. She's obviously not where she's supposed to sit. She's sitting somewhere else. Wanda Petronsky is not to be found in the class. And people have noticed, other girls have noticed her absence. In the previous classes, she used to sit in the corner of the room where all the rough boys, students, boys who did not perform well in their studies, or there was a lot of scuffling of the feet. The meaning of scuffling of feet is noisy, dragging movements of the feet on the ground. So where there was a lot of scuffling of the feet, the boys who did not, fare very well in their exams, they used to sit. So this girl used to sit there, but today she's not there. So where is she? Wanda did not sit there because she was rough and noisy. On the contrary, she was very quiet and rarely said anything at all. And nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. Sometimes she twisted her mouth into a crooked sort of smile, but that was all. Nobody knew exactly why Wanda sat in that seat unless it was because she came all the way from Boggins Heights and her feet were usually caked with dry mud. But no one really thought much about Wanda Petronsky once she sat in the corner of the room. So, Wanda was not used to sitting there because she was a rough and a noisy girl herself. That was not her characteristic. She was a very, very quiet girl. She is a very quiet girl who hardly said anything. So we get to know some of the characteristics of hers. She was what kind of a girl was she? It's her description. Describe Wanda Petronsky या describe the character of Wanda Petronsky. तो उसमें आप ये चीजें लिख सकते हैं that she was very quiet, she didn't say anything at all, she didn't even laugh out very loud, and if ever she had to react, she just had a very crooked smile on her face, and that's it. But today, she's not there. And no one really cared, कि वो कहाँ बैठी है, कोई किसी को, nobody really cared about her. The time when they thought about Wanda was outside of school hours. At noon time, when they were coming back to school or in the morning early, before school began, when groups of 2 or 3 or even more would be talking and laughing on their way to the schoolyard. So nobody used to talk of her when she was in the school. In fact, they spoke of her when she was outside the school. Outside the school, when either they were coming back to school or they were early before school began. That is when there would be groups of 2 to 3 people, 2 to 3 students, and they would be sitting and talking about Wanda. Then sometimes they waited for Wanda to have fun with her. The next day, Tuesday, Wanda was not in school either, and nobody noticed her absence again. So what do we understand? इसमें से हमें क्या समझ में आता है? That beginning of the week, Monday, this girl, the main character of the story, Wanda, did not go to school. She was not there at school. The second thing is that she used to sit in one corner of the room where, all the rough and the noisy boys would be sitting. That's number 2. Number 3, she was not rough and noisy herself. She was very quiet. She had a very crooked smile. She would never talk too much herself. Fourth, that nobody noticed her whether she was there or not there in school when they were in school. They would talk about her, they would laugh about her when they were outside the school, either before coming to school or when they were going back home. So this is the, till now, this is what all happens in the story. So let's move ahead. Where does, let's find out where is Wanda Petronsky. But on Wednesday, Peggy and Maddie, who sat down front with other children who got good marks and who didn't track in a whole lot of mud, did notice that Wanda wasn't there. Peggy was the most popular girl in school. She was pretty, she had many pretty clothes, and her hair was curly. Maddie was her closest friend. The reason Peggy and Maddie noticed Wanda's absences was because Wanda had made them late to school. Now this something happens on Wednesday. For 2 days she does not go, nobody notices her. Wednesday को क्या होता है? That there are 2 girls, Peggy and Maddie, who are sitting in front with other children who got good marks and who were not into, playing, or who were not rough, who were not noisy. And these 2 girls noticed that Wanda was not there because Peggy was a very popular girl in school. She was pretty and she used to wear good clothes and her hair was curly, and Maddie was her closest friend. So that's the relationship we get to know. And the reason why they noticed that Wanda is not there, because Wanda had made them late to school. Wanda की वजह से वो स्कूल के लिए लेट हुए थे, and that is why they were talking about her. So we are introduced to 2 other characters, and they are Peggy and Maddie. Peggy is the most beautiful girl. She wears pretty clothes. She's very popular, and Maggie is her friend. They had waited and waited for Wanda to have some fun with her, and she just hadn't come. They often waited for Wanda Petronsky to have fun with her. Wanda Petronsky, most of the children in room 13 didn't have names like that. They had names easy to say like Thomas, Smith, or Alan. There was one boy named Bounce, Willie Bounce, and people thought that was funny, but not funny in the same way that Petronsky was. So they all waited and waited for Wanda so that they could have some fun with her. To have some fun with her. This is the way they treated, this is how they treated her. They used to have fun with her. They used to make fun of her name, Wanda Petronsky. वो उसके नाम का भी मजाक उड़ाते थे. Because this was a very uncommon, very not so familiar name. ऐसा नाम उनकी क्लास में किसी बच्चे का था नहीं. They had very simple names like Bounce and Willie and Tom and all that. ये बहुत different नाम था उन बच्चों के लिए. तो they used to make fun of Wanda because of her name, and they used to make fun of her also. Wanda didn't have any friends. She came to school alone and went home alone. She always wore a faded blue dress that didn't hang right. It was clean, but it looked as though it had never been ironed properly. So why did they make fun of her? We get to know two important things from here. That she did not have any friends. That's number one. If you get a question on describe the character of Wanda Petronsky, you might get that. So these are the points that you need to write. Firstly, she didn't have any friends. Secondly, she always wore a faded blue dress. वो हर वक्त एक faded blue dress पहनती थी, which didn't hang right. Hang right मतलब didn't fit properly. मतलब which didn't fit properly. वो ठीक तरह से fit नहीं होती थी उस पे, but she used to wear that dress all the time. The dress would be very clean, but it seemed that it had never been ironed. कभी उस पे iron करके नहीं करा गया. It used to look like that. She didn't have any friends, but a lot of girls talked to her. Sometimes they surrounded her in the schoolyard as she stood watching the little girls play hopscotch on the worn, hard ground. We know that she did not have a friends, but बहुत सारी girls, there were many girls used to come and they used to talk to her. They used to surround her. उसके आसपास एक घेरा बना के, and where she would be seeing other girls play hopscotch on the worn hard ground. So she would see other girls playing hopscotch, and the other girls of her class, they would surround her and they would make fun of her. Let's move ahead. Wanda, Peggy would say in a most courteous manner, as though she were talking to Miss Mason. Wanda, she'd say, giving one of her friends a nudge. Tell us, how many dresses did you say you had hanging up in your closet? 100, Wanda would say. Now Peggy, who was her friend, not her friend, she would be there in her school, she used to say Wanda in a very courteous manner. बहुत अच्छे से, बहुत विनम्रता के साथ she used to say Peggy, she used to say Wanda, and as if she was talking to some teacher, Miss Mason. And Wanda, she'd say, giving one of her friends a nudge. वो gently push करके Wanda तक जाती थी, and she used to ask her that how many dresses you have in your closet. They would go, Peggy would go and ask her that how many dresses do you have, and she would say 100. If she had 100 dresses, why was she wearing the same dress every day? That's what we have to see. 100? Exclaimed all the little girls incredulously, and the little ones would stop playing hopscotch and listen. Yeah, 100, all lined up, said Wanda. Then her thin lips drew together in silence. So she would reply 100 dresses. She used to reply 100 dresses. And all the other girls who would be playing hopscotch or who were there standing next to her, they used to look at her incredulously, showing unwillingness to believe, not believing that she has 100 dresses to wear. What are they like? All silk, I bet, said Peggy. Yeah, all silk, all colors. Velvet too? Yeah, velvet too. 100 dresses. So again, they would ask her a little further कि क्या और सारी silk की dresses हैं? Or do you have velvet dresses also? Or do you have any other color dresses also? So these were the questions they used to ask her. And then she would very firmly answer them back that yes, I have 100 dresses. They are all silk. I have silk also. I have velvet also. I have all different colors also. And she would be very firm on her stand saying 100 dresses. Was she lying? What do you think? She would repeat stolidly, all lined up in my closet. Then they'd let her go. And then before she'd gone very far, they couldn't help bursting into shrieks and peals of laughter. 100 dresses. Obviously, the only dress Wanda had was the blue one she wore every day. So why did she say she had 100? What a story. And she used to answer back, Wanda used to answer back in a very stolid manner. Stolid means without showing any kind of an emotion. And when she would say that and she would walk away from there, the other girls would start to laugh. They would make fun of her. That, why, if she has 100 dresses, why does she wear the same blue dress every day? So they would make a lot of fun of her, and she would be unaffected. Till here, that's what we get to know. अब आगे देखते हैं, what is the story about? How many shoes did you say you had? 60 pairs, all lined up in my closet. Then they would ask her about her shoes. आपके पास shoes कितने हैं? And she would say that I have 60 pairs of shoes. Cries of exaggerated politeness greeted this. All alike? Oh no, every pair is different, all colors, all lined up. Peggy, who had thought up this game, and Maddie, her inseparable friend, were always the last to leave. So it seemed like as if they're playing a game with her. उसके साथ कोई खेल खेल रहे हैं. They would ask about her dresses, they would ask about her shoes, that what kind of shoes do you have? And she would say, I have all kinds of, all colors. I have 60 pairs in fact. And they're all lined up, they're of different colors, and, and each one is different from the other. They're all lined up. And every other girl would go away except for these two girls, Peggy and Maddie. They used to be the last one to leave, after having this conversation. Finally, Wanda would move up the street, her eyes dull and her mouth closed, hitching her left shoulder every now and then in the funny way she had, finishing the walk to school alone. And here we get to know that this was before she reached school. School पहुंचने से पहले, this is what used to happen with her. And she would answer all these questions, show as if she's not affected, and then she would walk up to her school all alone. Peggy was not really cruel. She protected small children from bullies, and she cried for hours if she saw an animal mistreated. If anybody had said to her, don't you think that is a cruel way to treat Wanda? She would have been very surprised. Cruel. Why did the girl say she had 100 dresses? Anybody could tell that that was a lie. Now in this paragraph, we are introduced to the character of Peggy. That what kind of a girl was Peggy? Describe Peggy. So if you get a question, describe Peggy, this is what you have to write. Pehla, that she was not really cruel. She would protect small children from bullies, and she cried for hours if she saw an animal mistreated. So it seemed that she was a very compassionate girl. She would not allow anyone to bully children. She would cry if there was any animal mistreated. So what do you think? Why would she treat Wanda like that? Wasn't she a human being? Wasn't she somebody who had a lot of feelings and emotions? तो वो उसका मजाक क्यों उड़ाती थी? And if anybody would ask, why? I mean, don't you feel this is cruel? So she would say cruel, and in response, वो जवाब में हमेशा यही कहती थी कि this girl always says I have 100 dresses, and that is a lie. I mean, she doesn't have 100 dresses. Had she had 100 dresses, she would have been wearing them to school. But she doesn't wear. She wears that just one dress. Why did she want to lie? So this was the question she had in her mind. कि वो झूठ बोलने की क्या जरूरत है? And she wasn't just an ordinary person. Else, why did she have a name like that? Anyway, they never made her cry. And, for them, because she had a very different name, उसका नाम बहुत different था, Wanda का. So, they would think that she's not a very ordinary person, she's somebody else. And she is a very different person, and because she has a very different name, her name is very, very uncommon. And although they would treat her very badly, but she wouldn't cry anytime. वो उनके behavior से कभी affect नहीं होती थी. Why? Let's see. As for Maddie, और वो क्यों नहीं कर पाते थे, इसको देखते हैं. As for Maddie, this business of asking Wanda every day how many dresses and how many hats and how many this and that she had was bothering her. Maddie was poor herself. She usually wore somebody's hand-me-down clothes. Thank goodness she didn't live up on Borgin Higgins or have a funny name. And talking about the character of the second girl, Maddie. What kind of a girl was Maddie? Again, you could be asked a question, describe Maggie's character. So what kind of a girl was Maggie? She was poor herself, and she usually wore somebody's hand-me-down clothes. She was a poor girl, but if there's one question which comes to your mind, कि वो जब वो खुद एक she was poor, she didn't have many clothes to wear. So why did she always ask Wanda that how many clothes did you have? She herself used to wear somebody else's clothes. Hands me down मतलब किसी के पहने हुए कपड़े. She used to wear those clothes. So why did she ask Wanda all the time about her clothes and about her shoes? The answer is here. This business of asking Wanda every day how many dresses and how many hats and how many this and that she had was bothering her. She used to do it maybe because the others were doing it. वो बाकी बच्चे उसको bully करते थे, so she also started doing it. Unconsciously not knowing that what is the repercussion, इसका क्या नतीजा निकलेगा, ये बिना जाने हुए, but now it had begun to bother her. अब वो उसको परेशान करने लगा था. The word bothering comes from bother, which means वो उसको अब she had started to think. Sometimes when Peggy was asking Wanda those questions in that mocking, polite voice, Maddie felt embarrassed and studied the marbles in the palm of her hand, rolling them around and saying nothing herself. So now we get to know another side of the character of Maddie. That when Peggy used to ask those questions to Wanda, she would not participate much. What would she do? She would feel embarrassed. She would study the marbles in the palm of her hand. Study them, मतलब हाथों पे हथेली पे छोटे छोटे पत्थर रखे हुए होते थे, and she used to look at them as if she didn't want to be a part of it. वो उसका हिस्सा नहीं बनना चाहती थी. So that's why she used to keep herself a little away from all this. Rolling them round and saying nothing herself. She would not say anything herself. Not that she felt sorry for Wanda exactly. She didn't feel sorry for her. She didn't feel bad for her. She would never have paid any attention to Wanda if Peggy hadn't invented the dresses game. But suppose Peggy and all the others started in on her next. She wasn't as poor as Wanda, perhaps, but she was poor. She wasn't very, sad. उसको exactly बहुत बुरा नहीं लगता था. Why? Because she would never have paid any attention to Wanda if Peggy hadn't invented the dresses game. So now we are introduced to the dresses game. The dresses game was a game invented by Peggy. Was invented by Peggy. Yeah, and she was a part of it. She wasn't as poor as Wanda, perhaps, but she was poor. Although she might not have been as poor, वो उतनी गरीब नहीं थी, but she was poor. And there was this game that she was a part of. So what was this game about? Let's see. Of course, she would have more sense than to say she had 100. Of course, she would have more sense than to say she had 100 dresses. Still, she would not like for them to begin on her. She wished Peggy would stop teasing Wanda Petronsky. No, of course, उसमें इतना sense था. She knew कि if somebody asks me how many clothes I have, I will not say 100 dresses. And she didn't like also that, they used to play this game with her. And in fact, she would ask her to stop teasing Wanda. Today, even though they had been late to school, Maddie was glad she had not had to make fun of Wanda. She worked her arithmetic problems absent-mindedly. This was all that was happening in the background, and the author takes us to the present day. Ki aaj they are late to school. They are late to school on Wednesday. Why are they late to school? Because Peggy was talking to Wanda about the dresses. Now today also, when they were already late, Maddie was glad she had not had to make fun of Wanda. उसको ये मौका नहीं मिला to make fun of Wanda because she, absent-mindedly, बिना ध्यान दिए हुए वो अपने arithmetic के questions कर रही थी. So she was not a part of that mockery. उसका वो हिस्सा नहीं थी, and she was glad that I wasn't a part of it. 8 times 8, let's see. She wished she had the nerve to write Peggy a note because she knew she never would have the courage to speak right out to Peggy to say, "Hey Peg, let's stop asking Wanda how many dresses she has." When she finished her arithmetic, she did start a note to Peggy. Now we get to know that Maggie में कभी भी she never had that courage to ask her to stop teasing Wanda. So she thought, I'll write a note. उसमें वो courage नहीं था कि वो जाके Wanda से बता पाती कि आप ये करना बंद कर दो. So what did she think? She thought that I'll write a note. I'll write something and I'll give that to her. Then maybe she'll understand. When she finished her arithmetic, she did start a note to Peggy. Suddenly, she paused and shuddered. She pictured herself in the schoolyard, a new target for Peggy and the girls. तो उसने लिखना भी शुरू किया, but then she paused. वो रुक गई और डर गई. Shuddered मतलब she was frightened. She started to think. She thought of herself कि now Wanda will be out, I will be the one who will be made fun of. वो मेरा मजाक उड़ाना start कर देगी. Peggy might ask her where she got the dress that she had on. And Maddie would have to say it was one of Peggy's old ones that Maddie's mother had tried to disguise with new trimmings so no one in room 13 would recognize it. And the real problem was that Maddie was also a poor girl and she used to wear clothes given by others. Now, if she tried to stop Peggy, she would be the new target. In the school ground, she would be asked that from where have you brought this dress? And she used to wear, Peggy's clothes. वो Peggy के ही कपड़े पहनती थी, and her mother used to trim the clothes for her, and she would be wearing those clothes. And she couldn't say that. Obviously, she didn't have the courage to say that I'm wearing your clothes. So वो कभी भी उसको रोकने की कोशिश नहीं करती थी. She would never try to stop Peggy from doing this. If only Peggy would decide of her own accord to stop having fun with Wanda, Oh well. Maddie ran her hand through her short blonde hair as though to push the uncomfortable thoughts away. And then, अगर ऐसा होता कि Peggy, she would stop teasing, uh, Wanda herself. These thoughts were going on in her mind. Whose mind? Maddie's mind. What difference did it make? Slowly, Maddie tore into bits the note she had started. She was Peggy's best friend, and Peggy was the best liked girl in the school room, in the whole room. Peggy could not possibly do anything that was really wrong, she thought. Peggy was the most popular girl, and she was her friend. So obviously, she did not want that, she should do something which would make her uncomfortable. So she tore the note. जो उसने लिखना start किया था, उसने उसको फाड़ दिया. As for Wanda, she was just some girl who lived up on Boggan's Heights and stood alone in the schoolyard. She scarcely ever said anything to anybody. The only time she talked was in the schoolyard about her 100 dresses. Now coming back to Wanda. Now she used to stay at Boggan's Heights. It's the name of the place. And she would always be alone in the yard. And nobody remembers her talking about anything else apart from that 100 dresses. वो 100 dresses के अलावा शायद उसने कुछ और बोलना सीखा ही नहीं था. She hadn't heard anything to talk. Maddie remembered her telling about one of her dresses, pale blue with colored trimmings. And she remembered another that was brilliant jungle green with a red sash. Now, what does Maddie remember? Maddie remembers उसको क्या याद आता है? About one of her dresses, which was blue with colored trimmings. And she remembered another that was brilliant jungle green with a red sash. You'd look like a Christmas tree in that, the girls had said in pretended admiration. So the only dress she remembers was वो red sash वाली, like a Christmas tree, a jungle green dress with a red sash. So she would make a lot of fun of Wanda. Thinking about Wanda and her 100 dresses all lined up in the closet, Maddie began to wonder who was going to win the drawing and coloring contest. For girls, this contest consisted of designing dresses, and for boys of designing motorboats. So now again they are taken back to the present scene. Now what is happening? There is a competition going on for drawing and coloring. The girls have to design dresses and boys have to design motorboats. Probably Peggy would win the girls' medal. Peggy drew better than anyone else in the room. At least that's what everybody thought. She could copy a picture in a magazine or some film star's head so that you could almost tell who it was. Oh, Maddie was sure Peggy would win. Well, tomorrow the teacher was going to announce the winners. Then they'd know. Now, what did Maddie think? That Maddie thought that this coloring contest is going to be won by Peggy only because she's very, very good at drawing. And the next day, when the teacher is going to announce the winners, she was sure, she was certain that Peggy is going to win this contest and nobody else can. The next day it was drizzling. Maddie and Peggy hurried to school under Peggy's umbrella. Naturally, on a day like this, they didn't wait for Wanda Petronsky on the corner of Oliver Street, the street that far, far away under the railroad tracks and up the hill led to Boggan's Heights. Anyway, they weren't taking chances on being late today because today was important. Do you think Miss Mason will announce the winners today? Asked Peggy. The results had to be announced and that day it was drizzling. हल्की हल्की बारिश हो रही थी. And Maddie and Peggy were under Peggy's umbrella and they were hurrying to school. And obviously, ऐसे दिन पे तो they would not wait for Wanda Petronsky to come and to make fun of her. And they are talking that whether the results of the winners, the names of the winners are going to be announced. Oh, I hope so. The minute we get in, said Maddie. Of course you'll win, Peg. Hope so, said Peggy eagerly. So they are having a conversation. वो बात कर रहे हैं कि Peggy is going to win. Maddie says that Peggy is going to win. The minute they entered the classroom, they stopped short and gasped. There were drawings all over the room on every ledge and windowsill, dazzling colors and brilliant lavish designs, all drawn on great sheets of wrapping paper. So when they entered the room, they saw such beautiful drawings that they were amazed. And it was everywhere, all over the room. Drawings were all over the room, on every ledge and windowsill, dazzling colors and brilliant, lavish designs, all drawn on great sheets of wrapping paper. There must have been 100 of them, all lined up. These must be the drawings for the contest. They were. Everybody stopped and whistled or murmured admiringly. As soon as the class had assembled, Miss Mason announced the winners. And there were how many of them? There were about 100 dresses all over. And everyone had started to talk about it. And Miss Mason would announce the winners. Jack Beggles had won for the boys, she said, and his design for an outboard motor was on exhibition in room 12 along with the sketches by all the other boys. So who had won for the boys? Jack Beggles. As for the girls, she said, although just 1 or 2 sketches were submitted by most, one girl, and room 13 should be proud of her, this one girl actually drew 100 designs, all different and all beautiful. In the opinion of the judges, any one of the drawings is worthy of winning the prize. I'm very happy to say that Wanda Petronsky is the winner of the girls' medal. So Wanda had won for the girls. The girls' contest, it was Wanda Petronsky who had won. And how many dresses had she drawn? She had drawn about 100 dresses. They were all different. They were all very, very beautiful. Unfortunately, Wanda has been absent from school for some days and is not here to receive the applause that is due to her. Let us hope she will be back tomorrow. Now, class, you may file around the room quietly and look at her exquisite drawings. So we can see Wanda drawing a dress here. And these words are said by the teacher who asks all the children to go up the room and just to see all the drawings by Wanda. The children burst into applause and even the boys were glad to have a chance to stamp on the floor, put their fingers in their mouths and whistle, though they were not interested in dresses. Look, Peg, whispered Maddie. There's that blue one she told us about. Isn't it beautiful? Yes, said Peggy. And here's that green one. Boy, and I thought I could draw. And these were some of the very beautiful drawings by Wanda. And these two girls, Peg and Maddie, are talking about the various color dresses, the green color dress, the blue color dress that Wanda used to talk about. So with this, we come to the end of the chapter. Let's look at the question and answers. How is Wanda seen as different by the other girls? How do they treat her? So how is she different? Her name was different. And she wouldn't talk much. Wouldn't talk much. How do they treat her? They would make fun of her. They would make fun of her. How does Wanda feel about the dresses game? Why does she say that she has 100 dresses? I think she feels excited about the game. She feels excited about the dresses game. And why does she say that she has 100 dresses? Because she had drawn those 100 dresses on wrapping paper. Because she had drawn those dresses on wrapping paper. Why does Maddie stand by and not do anything? How is she different from Peggy? Was Peggy's friendship important to Maddie? Why? Which lines in the text tell you this? Why does Maddie stand by and not do anything? Because she was poor. She was poor. She would wear she would wear Peggy's clothes. Peggy's clothes. And she would be embarrassed if Peggy asked her that whose dress is this. Was Peggy's friendship important to Maddie? Yes, Maddie's friendship was important to Maddie because why? The reason is that she was poor and she needed clothes, and her mother used to take clothes of Peggy and she would trim her and make Maddie wear those dresses. Which lines in the text tell you this? It's there in the previous line, the previous slide. If we go ahead, so the lines begin herself from here. She pictured herself in the schoolyard. She pictured herself in the schoolyard, a new target for Peggy and the girls. Peggy might ask her where she got the dress that she had on, and Maddie would have to say it was one of Peggy's old ones that Maddie's mother had tried to disguise with her new trimmings, so no one in room 13 would recognize it. So these lines tell us that she used to wear Peggy's dresses. Let's move ahead. Yeah, let's look at the last question. Yeah. What does Miss Mason think of Wanda's drawings? What do the children think of them? How do you know? What does Miss Mason think of Wanda's? Miss Mason thinks that Wanda's drawings are beautiful and exquisite. They are beautiful and exquisite. What do the children think of them? Children also think they are very pretty and beautiful. They are very pretty and beautiful. How do you know? We get to know from the murmurings. Murmurings of admiration and applause by the children. Murmurings of admiration and applause by children. With this, we come to the end of chapter 5. I hope you've read and understood the chapter well. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next class.